I'm just a regular Canadian girl who loves music and playing the piano. I've always been a bit shy, so when I met this guy from the UK online, it felt like a dream come true. We connected over our shared love for music, and before I knew it, we were dating. At first, everything seemed perfect. We'd spend hours talking, sharing our hopes and dreams. But slowly, things started to change. He became possessive, always demanding my attention. If I had a piano recital or homework to do, he'd get upset. Once, I told him I couldn't talk because I had a big recital coming up and needed to practice. He got angry, asking if I cared about him at all since I was always practicing. I tried to explain that I did care, but this was important to me too. He just sulked, saying he guessed he wasn't a priority for me. It was exhausting. He'd break up with me over the smallest things, only to come back a few days later acting like nothing happened. I was always walking on eggshells, afraid of setting him off. Things came to a head during a family trip to the UK. I was so excited to finally meet him in person, but it didn't go as planned. When I told him I couldn't meet him again the next day because my family wanted to visit Stonehenge, he completely lost it. He accused me of choosing some old rocks over him and dramatically said he might as well just die. I begged him not to say that and tried to get him to understand, but he wouldn't listen. He just said I clearly didn't care about him and that he was done. After that trip, things got worse. He cheated on me that made me feel like I was crazy for being upset about it. The final straw came when he broke up with me for the 5th time and something in me just snapped. I realized I didn't love him anymore. When I started dating someone new, he lost it. He started messaging me on every platform he could think of. Reddit, Discord, Facebook, even texting me. He even got my high school best friend involved. It was relentless. But the worst part was when he started spreading lies about me in our online music community. He told everyone I cheated on him, which wasn't true at all. When that didn't work, he started claiming I was stalking his real-life friends. It was insane. The stress of it all started to take its toll. I ended up in therapy, diagnosed with anxiety and depression. My university even registered me as disabled because of how bad things had gotten. As time went on, I started hearing from other girls in our community. They all had similar stories about him. One girl told me he had pressured her into spending time with him, and she felt really uncomfortable. Another said she'd been stuck on a call with him for 7 hours, not knowing how to end it, and had an anxiety attack afterward. A third girl was worried he was trying to turn all the artists at the label against her and ruin her friendships. Hearing their stories made me realize I had to do something. I couldn't let him keep hurting people like this. So I took action. I filed a police report and put together a massive document detailing everything he'd done. I shared it with the label community and even sent it to his college. The response was overwhelming. So many girls reached out to me, sharing their own experiences and asking for advice. I gave them all the information I could about the steps I'd taken. I shared everything I had done with the girls, acknowledging that it was scary but reassuring them they weren't alone. One girl thanked me profusely and said she was going to the police the next day. In the end, about 10 girls confirmed that they'd reported him to the police. A few days ago, he was taken in for investigation. As far as I know, he hasn't left the police station since. It's been a long, difficult journey, but I finally feel like I'm getting my life back. The community has been incredibly supportive, and knowing that I've helped other girls speak up makes all the pain worth it. I'm still in therapy, still working through my anxiety and depression, but for the first time in a long time, I feel hopeful about the future. I don't know what will happen to him, but I do know this. I'm done being scared. I'm done being silent, and I'm ready to start living my life on my own terms again. As a marine biologist specializing in Arctic ecosystems, I frequently travel between Seattle and Anchorage for research projects. This one journey was meant to be a routine hop back home after presenting my findings at a conference. Little did I know, my seat assignment would lead to an unforgettable encounter. Here's how it all went down. So I got on my flight yesterday for a short 1 hour and 20-minute flight. When I settled into my seat, I noticed the guy next to me seemed a bit restless. I decided to strike up a conversation, figuring it might help pass the time. I greeted him casually, asking how he was doing. The man turned to me with a warm smile, his voice booming as he replied. He admitted he was doing all right, but confessed to being a bit nervous about flying. I nodded sympathetically and we started chatting. It didn't take long for me to realize he was a disabled combat veteran. His voice carried throughout our section of the plane, but his friendliness was infectious. I expressed my appreciation for his service and thanked him for his sacrifice. His eyes welled up a bit, and I felt a lump in my throat too. The veteran shared that my words meant a lot to him. He told me about his service in the First Gulf War, explaining how he got his neck pretty messed up and had been on disability ever since. As we continued talking, I noticed that the woman in front of me kept looking over her shoulder, shoving her earbuds in deeper with each look. She was clearly frustrated, but I chose to ignore it. The veteran and I discovered we were both huge sports fans. He was all about the Packers while I bled Seahawks blue and green. Our conversation flowed easily from there. The veteran opened up about his loneliness, mentioning that his wife left after the accident and his kids rarely called anymore. My heart went out to him. I looked around and noticed most passengers were smiling warmly at us. Well, except for the woman in front, who was now leaning forward in her seat, practically contorting herself to escape our conversation. I was getting a bit tired, but something about her attitude rubbed me the wrong way. So I pressed on. I asked the veteran about his thoughts on the current political situation. His eyes lit up as he launched into an impressively informed analysis. We covered everything from domestic policies to international relations. I found myself genuinely fascinated by his insights. During the brief lulls in our chat, I made sure to pipe up with a new topic. I inquired about his knowledge of marine biology in Alaska. The veteran admitted he didn't know much but expressed his interest in learning. I happily obliged, sharing stories about my research trips and the unique challenges of studying Arctic ecosystems. All the while, the woman in front kept shooting us dirty looks, wincing as she jammed her earbuds even further into her ears. When we began our descent, I decided to address the elephant in the room. I politely asked the woman if everything was okay, noting that she seemed uncomfortable. She whipped around her face a mask of barely contained rage. The woman angrily responded, demanding to know if we realized how loud we had been throughout the entire flight. She complained that some people were trying to relax. The veteran apologized, explaining that he knew his voice sometimes carried due to his injury. The woman retorted that it wasn't her problem and insisted we should be more considerate of others. I felt my blood boiling, but before I could respond, a flight attendant appeared. The flight attendant inquired if there was an issue. The angry woman confirmed there was, complaining that we wouldn't stop talking and it was ruining her flight. The flight attendant calmly explained that she had been observing the situation. She pointed out that the gentleman was a disabled veteran and that we had been having a pleasant conversation at a reasonable volume. She offered to provide the woman with complimentary noise-canceling headphones if she was having trouble. The woman's face turned beet red as she realized the other passengers were now staring at her disapprovingly. She mumbled something under her breath and turned back around, refusing the headphones. Several passengers stopped to thank the veteran for his service. I exchanged contact information with him, promising to catch up over a game sometime. Walking through the terminal, I spotted the angry woman struggling with her oversized carry-on. As karma would have it, it burst open, spilling its contents across the floor. Serves her right. My uncle is autistic and has PTSD. We call him Bruno, like the character from Encanto. Most days he's pretty independent, but sometimes he needs a bit of help with things like eating or brushing his hair. It's not a big deal. We're family, and that's what families do. One day my friend came over while my grandmother and youngest brother were helping Bruno eat. Instead of being understanding, she made a huge fuss about it. She started making fun of Bruno and even accused my family of abusing him and my brother. I was shocked. This was someone I thought was my friend. And here she was, completely misunderstanding and disrespecting our family situation. Things got worse when her dad got involved. He started talking to me rudely, and Bruno, being protective, tried to intervene. That's when the dad hit Bruno, hitting a disabled person who was just trying to defend his family. We pressed charges immediately. The trial was this past week. I can't go into too many details, but I'll share what I can. As a witness, I couldn't be in the courtroom the whole time, so some of this info comes from Bruno. Before I get into the trial, let me share a funny moment that happened at home. My mom was watching a crime documentary about cops using security cameras to solve crimes. She commented that it was cheating for the cops to use cameras. Bruno, who was walking through the living room at the time, overheard it and got confused. He asked what was cheating, and when my mom explained, Bruno replied that since criminals were cheating in life, he thought it was okay for the cops to use cameras. I swear Bruno's one-liners could fill a book. But anyway, back to the trial. The dad's main argument was ridiculous. He claimed Bruno had assaulted my ex-friend and that he couldn't be held responsible for his actions because he was protecting his baby from a 45-year-old man. Throughout the trial, the dad and his lawyer tried to make my ex-friend sound much younger than she actually is. She's 18, not a child. We quickly disputed this claim. Bruno and my ex-friend had never even been alone in the same room, and they'd barely ever spoken to each other. Plus, Bruno hasn't shown any interest in women for years due to some medical procedures he's had. When this fact came up, you could see the color drain from the dad's lawyer's face. Bruno told me later that they knew they were in trouble at that point. Bruno explained in court that his disability required him to have some procedures that made him uncomfortable about getting into relationships and messed up his hormone levels. The evidence presented was mainly the police report and footage from the store where the incident happened. When I took the stand, I confirmed that my ex-friend had never been alone with Bruno in our house. She was always with me because she was my friend. I also recounted what happened on the day of the assault. My ex-friend was one of the last to testify. She tried to backpedal, saying she felt uncomfortable around Bruno and that he looked at her weirdly. But eventually, she had to admit that Bruno never touched her or said anything sexual to her. It was satisfying to watch her story fall apart. The judge's response was perfect. He expressed sympathy for my ex-friend feeling uncomfortable around a man with special needs living his life and having his needs met. However, he said this discomfort was not a reason to spread false allegations, whether intentional or not. He also addressed the entitled dad, saying that a special needs man being in public was not a reason to assault him, no matter what he may have done. In the end, the dad was found guilty of a Class A misdemeanor for assaulting a disabled person and causing a public disturbance. He got 3 years in prison and a $4,000 fine. He was furious, but the judge just told him to be happy that he would be out in time to see his daughter graduate university. I'm relieved it's over. Bruno seems much more at ease now, and he's looking forward to his sister's wedding next month. Right now, he's in the other room teasing her about being addicted to Candy Crush. It feels good to have things back to normal. I'm proud of my family for supporting Bruno and not backing down in the face of false accusations and violence. It's not always easy having a family member with special needs, but the love and understanding we share make it all worthwhile. A few years back, my mom landed herself in jail for deliberately violating a court order. She knew it was illegal, but in her mind, it was everyone else's fault. She believed she could do whatever she wanted because she was a struggling single mother just trying to provide for her kids. The truth is, she couldn't care less about me. After her arrest, I ended up living with distant relatives I'd never met before. My aunt and uncle, whose daughter had married into our family, were wonderful people who welcomed me with open arms. Living with them was a breath of fresh air after enduring my mom's nonsense for so long. They treated me more like a daughter in a month than my mom had in years. But my mom couldn't stand not making everyone miserable, even from behind bars. Every day, she'd call our landline 4 times between 8 and 9 a.m. When no one answered, she'd call my uncle's cell twice, then my aunt's cell twice. She'd repeat this routine from 2 to 3 p.m. Don't ask me how she managed so many calls from jail. At first, we tried to answer, but it always went the same way. I'd pick up the phone and say hello only to be met with my mom's screaming. She'd yell about being in jail as if I somehow didn't know. Then she'd complain about how awful it was, mentioning trivial things like not having toothpaste or being unable to wear earrings. After her rants, she'd start making demands. She'd insist that I needed to get her out of jail and find her a lawyer quickly. She'd emphasize that she didn't have time for nonsense. I was 15 at the time, busy with school. I tried to reason with her, mentioning that she would get a public defender. This only made her angrier. She accused me of acting stupid and insisted she needed more than a newly graduated lawyer. She demanded someone who would care and actually help her. I actually spent time calling attorneys, leaving messages. Most were confused why a kid was calling for an adult. Those who called back either didn't take cases like my mom's or were too busy. When I told my mom this, she accused me of lying. She couldn't understand why my aunt and uncle weren't helping. The truth was, they recognized her abusive behavior and wanted to stay out of it. Things escalated when she demanded I write to Dr. Phil, Nancy Grace, and Oprah. She claimed she needed her case to have national attention. I knew it was ridiculous. The entitlement reached new heights when I ran into one of her old co-workers at the grocery store. He asked if my mom was still in jail, then surprised me with some shocking information. He told me that my mom had sent a 15-page handwritten letter to their organization. When I asked why, he explained that she had requested them to start a charity fund just for her. It was meant to cover her bail, attorney costs, and court fees. He added that she wanted the minimum goal to be $1 million. I was mortified. My mom had tried to start a GoFundMe from jail targeting an organization that helps women in rehab and abusive relationships. Her argument, I'm a single mom. When an attorney finally called back with his rates, I relayed the message to my mom. She responded with indignation, questioning why he was charging her. She asked if I had told him she was a single mom, insisting that he should be taking her case for free. She claimed it was obvious she didn't have that kind of money. Fed up, my aunt and uncle contacted a police officer friend to inquire about her excessive phone access. Turns out, she'd made a deal with another inmate to get a phone. She was punished with extra jail work and lost phone privileges. Later, we heard she got into a big fight and was severely injured. None of us cared. She got what she deserved. Throughout this ordeal, I realized how manipulative and entitled my mom truly was. Her constant demands, disregard for others, and belief that the world owed her everything were eye-opening. Living with my aunt and uncle showed me what a healthy family dynamic looked like, and I was grateful for their support. And mom's actions caught up with her. The extra time in jail, loss of privileges, and the fight she got into were all consequences of her own choices. In the end, her entitlement didn't get her anywhere. It only pushed away the few people who might have been willing to help her.